Okay, so over the next sort of half an hour, I'm going to be talking through the next project, Places and Spaces, for Unit 3, Specialist Studies in Design, Media and Screen. Some of the following slides are from a particular special place and space that myself and my family go to every year in Rye, East Sussex, on the coast of the English Channel. So I'm using some of these images as background images for the talk. So Places and Spaces is a project that will allow you to speculate freely with the concepts of space, place, and their representation. Your brief is to carefully select a place or space and produce work that captures its essence. Now, this place and space can be either in the UK, where you're living, or it can be, if you've gone back home, it can be wherever you are at a particular time. We're asking you to document, analyse, understand and capture the essence of the place through generating a body of research through sketchbooks, photography, drawings, films, sound recordings, anything that you feel can capture the unique atmospheric qualities of your chosen space and place. You will need to communicate the feeling and atmosphere, not just the visual aspects. Although they're important, it's about capturing other things, rather than just the physical or virtual space. So you may find it's useful to make notes and write about your feelings about a particular space. What does it make you feel when you're in this space or place? The challenge offered by this project is for you to use design, media and screen processes and methods to help viewers to understand and experience some of the unique qualities of your chosen space and place. You're required to submit an outcome. You will choose from the 3 specialisms, design, media or screen, which reflect the 3 schools at LCC: Design School, Media School and Screen School. You will then make a choice from the 3 programmes within each school. In the Design School, there's Branding and Design Innovation, Graphic Design Communication, and Interactive Design and Visual Media. In the Media School, Communications and Media, Journalism and Publishing, and Photography. And then in the Screen School, we have Film and Television, Moving Image and Digital Arts, and Sound and Music. The outcome format is dependent on your selected specialism programme, space, place, and research findings. You should work closely with your tutors, peers, and your own research to determine the development of your outcome. Now that's really important because you're being given quite a lot of freedom for this project, but this still needs to be closely you need to closely work alongside your tutors and peers and constantly get views and critiques on the work that you're developing. But fundamentally, the first part of this project is about your research. It's really important. First and secondary research is crucial to developing a quality outcome. And again, we're asking you to produce a process and research document. Visual and written evidence of research, sketchbooks, logbooks, documentation of the materials analysis underpins the body of independent experimental work appropriate to your specialist pathway. Examples of your practical projects related to key concepts of the unit, and the dimensions are the same from the previous process and research document you did for orientation. And I think you really should be able to build upon some of the fantastic work that you've already done in relation to the process and research document for the orientation unit. Now, what is a place and a space? It could be a room, a corner, a place, a journey, a time, a game, a seat, a table, a train, a cupboard, a fridge, a view, a window, a surface, a corridor, a lift, a stairs, a bus. It's what you decide is that special place and space and what it means to you. What I'm going to do now is just take you through some references which I hope will enable you to see and start thinking about particular spaces and places. Now these references come from, I've tried to make the references come from mainly from the areas within design, media and screen school. So there's elements of places and spaces that relate to all the 3 schools and hopefully the programs within those schools. But it will take some thinking about your particular place and space. And as the project progresses, certainly in the first 2 weeks before the Christmas break, we'll be asking you to research not just one but several places and spaces and present that to the group. So you can start really carefully, forensically analysing and researching a place and space. So this slide here is from the film Parasite, which I hope that you're familiar with. It won the Oscar in 2019. So Parasite follows members of a poor family who scheme to become employed by a wealthy family by infiltrating their household and posing as unrelated, highly qualified individuals. Now, the majority of these sets for Parasite were actually physically built specifically for each scene, and this was the bathroom and toilet within the home of the poor family, and it's quite as you can see, the forensic detail within this space is very, very good, and I think it's that understanding of a particular space and immersing yourself in a space is what we're looking for. And then obviously within the wealthy family, there is this shelter that is in the basement of the house, which is used extensively through the film as a place to shelter and where eventually the story resolves itself. And if you haven't seen this film, I can highly recommend it. So another reference to a film is a film called Room, where a woman is held captive for 7 years and whose 5-year-old son was born in captivity. And what's really interesting about this film is that for the first half of the film, it's just basically set in this one room. And the room is a bedroom, it's a bathroom and it's a kitchen. And again, how it's filmed, the physical room was built, and there was the separate areas of walls, ceiling and floors exposed, so the camera could actually move into the room but not actually physically changing the space itself. And again, the forensic detail about this room and how the camera uses the room is quite excellent. So again, if you haven't seen this film, it is quite, in some places it's quite a challenging film to watch, but it is a very good film. And I think what happens in the second half of the film when they escape, it's about experiencing the outside world for the first time. So you've got 2 spaces. You've got the room and then you've got the external space, and how the film uses that those 2 spaces is really, really interesting. And there you can see the room there that they actually built that room, that set for the film. So you're probably all very familiar with Stanley Kubrick, and in fact we do have the Kubrick archive at LCC. And as far as I'm aware, you may need to check this, but I think it is open by appointment only, so you can still go and explore the archive. So this is obviously, if you're not familiar with the film The Shining, this is a scene from The Shining, and it's the actual setting of the 1980s, Shining is probably one of the most distinctive characters in all of the Kubrick's filmography. So, and when I talk about the setting, I mean about the place itself. So, the Overlook Hotel, where the film is set, was actually only for the exterior shots was used the Timberline Lodge in Oregon, America. But the interiors were constructed at L3 Studio, which is a very large film studio. And they actually built these physical sets to give a more realistic control over the space. So the production designer gave the Overlook Hotel a mundane and a sort of, as it said in my notes here, so a killer aesthetic, in that there's long corridors, contrasting corridors, narrow corridors, and created really claustrophobic spaces with high ceilings and very much exaggerated features to try and perplex the viewer and make us feel very uncomfortable. Also, Stanley Kubrick had a particular obsession with corridors and one-point perspective. And with one-point perspective in Kubrick's films, the audience's attention is always at the centre of the frame, and he makes the viewer wonder if something will happen. And I think it creates tension within the film. And again, you can see a really good example here of Kubrick's one-point perspective. So Jane Louise Wilson are two artists, they're sisters, and they're filmmakers, they're photographers, they're installation artists, they're sculptors. And this is a series of images about Chernobyl. After the nuclear reactor exploded in Russia in '86, a gentleman called Vladimir Shevchenko was on the scene within days. His film is the basis for an art installation by Jane Louise Wilson. But Shevchenko died a few years later, and his camera was so radioactive that it was buried as nuclear waste. But the sisters managed to track down the site where the camera was buried, just outside Kiev. And the three surviving cameramen tell their stories in the film that they produced called Toxic Camera. And if you can get hold of it, it's a really interesting film to watch. And the photographs show the ghost town being reclaimed by nature. And they describe it as a jungle looming outside the windows of the empty swimming pool. And the roof of the lecture hall, in further photographs. So if you get to see the film, it is really, really interesting. And again, these are some images from Jane Louise Wilson's Alsaville. So in 2006, they produced 3 large-scale black and white photographs of the abandoned and derelict Second World War bunkers on the Normandy coast. And these are huge, huge images, and they were on exhibition at the Tate for some time. And again, it's to show a particular time, a particular space, and use of particular materials, and there's a particular reason why these buildings were built. So again, it's about that detail, that forensic detail about a place and a space. So this is Mike Nelson's work. This is a piece called Coral Reef, and it's a very large architectural installation consisting of 15 rooms with connected corridors. So it's an installation piece, and it was installed in a gallery in the entrance to and exit from its interior through large single doors in the gallery. At no point can exterior walls of the installation be seen. So it's an immersive experience, physical experience. And this ensures that the scale installation cannot be reduced. So as you go into this space, you can't really tell how big it is. And I think it's quite interesting. This piece of work was made in 2000, and then 17 years later, the film Escape Room came out, which I think we're probably all familiar with. So it's interesting how this type of work, this type of experience within a space and a place, that sort of concept and idea was then produced in the film Escape Room in 2017. And there's 2 more pictures of coral reef. This is an artist called Song Dong, and he produces installations, and this particular piece is by Same Bed Different Dreams. It's steel and wooden windows, doors, beds, mirror coated glass, lights, and it's sort of an installation of the sort of the daily necessities of what we use in our daily lives and the reflections of these artifacts that we have in our places and spaces. Very interesting piece of work. And again, this was exhibited at the Tate some years ago. Martin Parr. So some of you may be familiar with the photographer Martin Parr. And in the 90s, he worked with the BBC on a documentary called Sign of the Times, where he documented the personal tastes of people within a British home around the United Kingdom. And it was one of the first sort of versions of reality television. So he went into these spaces with a camera crew from the BBC, forensically photographed and filmed the spaces, and then set the same question to each person in the different houses. And it's a very, very extremely interesting piece of social documentary about a particular time, as I said, in the 90s. And again, the forensic detail that Martin has with his work is very good and very, very interesting. And again, depicts a particular time, I would say, and a space. And I think how, you know, this was before IKEA, and it was very, very interesting how these spaces have changed, or our spaces have changed over the years. So Steve McQueen, I think I've mentioned him before, or in the previous project, or some of you tutors have, and I have him with my group. So Steve McQueen is a filmmaker, an artist, a sculptor, a painter, a photographer, and this was taken from his recent exhibition at the Tate. And this particular work I was fascinated by when I went to see, and it's the Totona mine in South Africa, and the piece of work is known as Western Deep, and it's the world's deepest gold mine, employing more than 5,000 people. It operates 24 hours a day, and the film begins in complete darkness as the miners descend 3.5 kilometres underground. And McQueen documents an intense work regime where the temperature can reach over 90 degrees Celsius. And I think I've got some clips I'll show in a minute, but you'll hear from the sounds created by the mechanical equipment. It's an incredible experience, and it does represent the sort of really hellish and harsh labour that makes this film quite, in some cases, quite difficult to watch. So that was in the mine. They have these channels where the water is pumped out, and it's incredible sound. And in the Tate, these do on big screens, so it was very, very interesting to hear. And then this next film, I'll just play it. So that was the drilling at the basement of the shaft, drilling, and again it was very dark, and there was constant water being coming out of the wall. It was very, very interesting, very atmospheric, and again a particular space and a place. So Dear Esther is a video game, and I thought that given that some of you are very interested in video gaming, I put some examples in here. So thanks to Lucy actually for providing some of these examples. And again, I think that the video gaming is about creating spaces and places through imagination. And I think more and more gaming is becoming very immersive in that the reality, the sense of reality is becoming all-encompassing. So I think this particular game, Dear Esther, is a first-person exploration video game exploring, and it's developed by a company called Chinese Room for Microsoft for various platforms, macOS, PlayStation 4 and Xbox. So it was released in 2008, so it's some time ago. And in my notes it says the game was entirely redeveloped for commercial release in 2012 after the initial release in 2008, and it was originally an art project from a UK university, and the game spawned many walking simulator genre games, and it's just some beautiful imagery within the game. I put this one in Alien Isolation as a game because of the quite stunning artwork produced for this game, and again it's phenomenally detailed in the forensic understanding of the spaces and places within the game, and again, if you haven't played it, it's an amazing game. And I think the company that produced the game wanted to go back to the original Alien film and capture that real essence of a space and a place, and the terrifying aspects of walking around a particular space. So I've got a clip here of a walkthrough. So I think that really captures the sort of the space and the place that was designed and built, and obviously it's in one very short scene from the film, but it's from the game. So I think that really captures those spaces and places, those virtual spaces and places that can be designed within immersive contexts. The next game, I've got a couple of games here. So this one particularly called Gone Home, and it's set in the year 1985, and it puts the player in the role of a young woman returning from overseas and to find her family currently absent from an empty house. And it's sort of, you have to wander around the house to piece together sort of recent events. And it's about that exploration. It's about exploring the place and the space in the house, and by examining things like journals and books and other items left around that you have to physically pick up and examine. So I've got a short clip here of a walkthrough. Okay, so that gives you a really good idea of the game, and I think again it was Lucy. Thank you for sending me this info. And again, I think the idea, that interactivity and trying to find out the story within a particular space is really good. So This is Rachel Whiteread. I don't know if you've come across Rachel Whiteread, but this is she's a fine artist, a painter and sculptor, this is a work that's in the Tate called Untitled Stairs, and it's a very large freestanding sculpture made up of 10 casts, elements that are bolted together to form the unit. It's so. And it's as I say, it's 3 casts made in a building in Bethnal Green, which she used to live in with her and her partner. So she actually casts spaces, which is again really, really interesting. She started doing this type of work when she was a student, where she was pouring concrete into hot water bottles. So she was trying to reveal the space within an object, and again, really, really, really fascinating work that she produces. So I wanted to put Edward Hopper in. I don't know if you're familiar with Edward Hopper. So he's an American realist painter and printmaker, and he's probably best known for his oil paintings, finely detailed paintings, renderings, reflecting a sort of personal vision of modern American life at the time. So he was born in 82 and died in 67. So he had a really interesting period of time to be painting in America. And I think his work has influenced many filmmakers and continues to do so. And primarily Alfred Hitchcock was fascinated by Edward Hopper's work. And he took a direct reference from House by the Railside that Hopper painted in, I think it was 1925. And as you can see on the left here is a painting by Edward Hopper, and then the house in Psycho on the right. I think you can just make out the mother in the window. Alfred Hitchcock was immensely influenced by Edward Hopper's vision of America in the late 50s and early 60s. I wanted to talk about text as such, in that how can words communicate spaces, and how can those spaces create images in our heads. And I think I found a really good website that you can download legally and for free, scripts. So I'll just read this. This is from the film Get Out by Jordan Peele. Hopefully some of you have seen it. So Chris wakes up in front of him. A deer's head is mounted above an old school floor standing television. Behind him, a goat's head is mounted under a taxidermy owl, wings spread. There are several objects precisely placed around the room. His arms and legs are fastened to a leather upholstered chair in the middle of a small, dark room. Chris pulls at the straps that bind his arms and legs. Chris tries to gnaw at the harness, but they are too thick. So I think if I hadn't put the image there, which probably in hindsight I shouldn't have put the image there and put this image on the next slide, but I think it really that piece of writing is very descriptive of a place and a space and a moment in time. So I suppose what words are very descriptive, and obviously we've read novels in the past. We've all read novels, and when we read words, they enable us to put images in our own heads. So I think that's something that maybe some of you want to explore, the idea of words creating spaces. So illustrator Sean Tan, he grew up in Perth and is an artist, writer, filmmaker. I think he's best known for his illustrated books that deal with social and historical subjects through dreamlike imagery. So again, the illustrators of you, these are really interesting work to look into, Sean Tan's work. Pam Sim, or Somi, apologies if I pronounced that wrong. This is a book called Thornhill, and it's a graphic novel. And it's told across 2 timelines, detailing the lives of 2 girls separated by 35 years. And it's a really interesting book, and I've only seen it online. I haven't seen it I haven't seen a copy of it. But I think again, the forensic detail that goes into these spaces and places that are produced by Pam, very, very intricate and very beautiful. But again, there's an underlying uncertainty around the images. And again, the graphic novel depicts some very unhappy diary entries. And again, yeah, very an amazing piece of work. So if you get a chance to check that out, check that out. So I put the word questions here. So hopefully your tutors now will be able to answer some of the questions. So I think, predominantly what you need to think about this project is that it's about that forensic research at the beginning about a particular space and place. And that's what's so important about this project. The research is so, so, so important. And that you forensically research that place and a space. And that can be with drawing, it can be painting, it can be photographs, it can be short films. Use your mobile phone. Your mobile phone is such a great tool to document spaces and places. You can take photographs with your phone, you can make films with your phone, you can dictate into your phone, you can talk into your phone and record how you're feeling. So that's really, really important with this project. And as you'll probably see, that you've got to produce a body of research, which again will be edited into your research document, and then your outcome. And now your outcome is entirely up to you. You'll see from the assignment brief that's on Moodle, on the Moodle site, that the outcome can be in the format of a PDF or an MP4 again. And that's again, so you've had experience of dealing with those particular formats. So please talk to your tutors, and remember that we'll be doing an online submission again. So no more than 100 megabytes per file, and that's really super important. But the outcomes, you could have multiple outcomes, and obviously the research document is the research document. So I hope that's helped. I hope you're going to find this really interesting. I think as a team, we're really excited to see what you do with this project. And I think some of you will see there's a natural progression from the orientation project, where we actually gave you a place and space in relation to the festival hall and the Soundscape Festival, where you had to produce multiple outcomes. This project, Specialist Studies, Place and Spaces, you can actually really hone your skill and your practice and start to really think about what you want to do in the future. And I said, we're really excited to see what you can do. So I think that's it. Thank you.